The rain had not stopped since morning, and the road to Ezeoke boarding school was a ribbon of mud curling through wet green hills. Nkiru sat by the bus window, chin pressed to the cool glass, watching droplets race each other in crooked paths. They slid down in pairs and collided, merging into larger beads that streaked across the fogged pane. The motion made her stomach sway, but she kept her eyes there anyway. It was something to hold on to, something outside herself. Her father's voice still echoed from the night before. "It will be better for you there," he had said, tone careful, almost too careful. A fresh start. A fresh start. As though the life she had known was a stain to be scrubbed off. As though everything, her mother's warmth, her old neighborhood, the friends she had trusted, were things to be folded away and locked in a chest. She hadn't wanted a fresh start. She wanted what she already had, flawed and messy though it was. She wanted the smell of beans simmering in her mother's pot, the sound of her neighbors calling across the dusty road. But her father had remarried. Her stepmother had a face that was kind in public, always ready with a smile for church members or visiting relatives. But at home she was a shadow made of glass. Sharp words, colder silences. Her presence filled the house like smoke, suffocating and unseen. So Nkiru was sent away. When the bus jerked to a stop before the iron gates of Ezeoke boarding school, her stomach twisted. The sign above the arch was faded, letters chipped but still legible. Ezeoke Girls' Secondary School. The gate itself was rusted, streaks running like old tears down its bars. Inside, the compound breathed a weary age. Buildings loomed, their cream paint dulled and cracked, plaster peeling like shedding bark. Tall, narrow windows glimmered with clouded glass, catching what little light the gray sky allowed. The roofs sagged in places, as though bearing burdens too heavy for too long. A matron in a stiff skirt and headscarf ticked her name off a clipboard and led her through the courtyard. Students in brown and cream uniforms darted across puddled paths, their voices carrying faintly in the damp air. Some looked at Nkiru long enough for her to notice, never long enough to smile. The air smelled of wet wood, chalk dust, and something older, sour and nameless, like pages left too long in a locked trunk. Her dormitory was on the second floor of the east wing. The stairwell groaned under her weight as she climbed, its banister polished by years of hands. The dorm itself was tall, the ceiling shadowed, walls stained by damp patches that spread like maps. She placed her small bag on the bed nearest the window, its iron frame creaking in protest. Two girls were already there. One lay on her side, a novel open in her hands. The other sat cross-legged, threading colorful beads into her braids. They greeted her with polite words, eyes slipping back to their tasks. No one asked where she was from. That night, rain softened to mist, and the dormitory surrendered to sleep. Nkiru lay awake, staring at the wardrobe's outline against the dark. The wood popped softly in the cool air. She thought of home, of her mother's voice, of her father's silence, and the ache behind her ribs deepened. Then she heard it. A murmur. So faint, at first she thought it was the rain again, slipping through some crack in the window. But it came again, low, rhythmic, unmistakable. A voice. She saw too much. Not safe here. Her breath caught. It wasn't the other girls. She could hear their slow, even breathing. This voice came from somewhere else, from inside the wall to her right. She pulled the blanket to her chin and squeezed her eyes shut until the sound faded. The next morning she told herself it was nothing, just nerves, exhaustion, her mind trying to make sense of the silence. Still, she asked casually, she hoped if the others had heard anything. The girl with the beads snorted. "You mean the whispers? That's just pipes. Don't mind it. This place is old." But the girl with the book, her name was Ifeoma, looked up from her page and met Nkiru's eyes with an intensity that made her throat dry. "It's not pipes," she said quietly. "The walls here, they remember things. If you listen too long, you'll hear things you weren't meant to know." Nkiru didn't ask more, but the words clung to her skin like damp clothes. That night, she kept her eyes on the ceiling, willing herself not to hear. But the voice returned. Chinelo, unfinished story. The name lodged itself in her mind, sharp and insistent. Chinelo. The whispers came again the next night, and the next. Sometimes muffled, sometimes clearer. She began to dread bedtime, lying stiff and sleepless while her roommates drifted easily into dreams. When she covered her ears, the sound seemed to crawl beneath her palms. When she hummed softly to drown it, the whispers grew louder, as though offended by her defiance. Her grades began to slip. She forgot things she had just read, struggled to concentrate. The matron scolded her for drifting off in class. The other girls whispered about her distracted gaze and darkening circles under her eyes. Only Ifeoma watched her with quiet recognition, as if she, too, knew what it was like to be haunted. One evening, after prep, Nkiru lingered by the stairwell. The rain had stopped, leaving the air heavy and damp. Ifeoma walked past, her book hugged to her chest. "Do you know who Chinelo is?" Nkiru asked, before she could lose her nerve. Ifeoma froze, her expression shifting almost imperceptibly. "You heard that name?" Nkiru nodded. Ifeoma's gaze darted down the hall, making sure they were alone. "Don't listen to them," she whispered. "That name belongs to someone who doesn't belong here anymore. The more you pay attention, the closer they get. Do you understand?" But Nkiru didn't. Not fully. Not yet. The whispers did not stop. Some nights they rose like wind, shifting from one corner of the room to another. Other nights they pressed against her bed, seeping up through the floorboards as if the very wood wanted to confide in her. She tried to resist. She told herself she would not listen. But when darkness stretched too long and the dormitory breathed with the steady rhythm of sleepers, her ears betrayed her. The whole, the journal, buried truth. Each phrase slipped under her skin, crawling into her thoughts. By day she could almost ignore them. But at night they became a net, drawing her in. The name Chinelo returned again and again, sometimes followed by laughter, brittle and wrong, sometimes by a sob so faint it tightened her chest. During classes, her eyes drifted to the windows. She imagined the walls there two thin layers of plaster and brick holding voices captive, waiting for night to release them. The history teacher noticed her inattention. "Nkiru," he barked once, rapping a cane against his desk. "Recite the year of amalgamation." Her mind went blank. The class tittered. Heat rushed to her cheeks. At lunch, two girls at her table leaned close, whispering not like the walls, but like teenagers who enjoyed cruelty. "She's strange, always staring at nothing. Maybe she talks to spirits." Nkiru stood abruptly, tray rattling, and left her food untouched. Only Ifeoma seemed to see past the surface. One afternoon she slid onto the bench beside Nkiru under a jacaranda tree, her book as usual in hand. "You're getting thinner," she said plainly. "You don't eat, you don't sleep, you're walking around like a ghost." Nkiru tightened her grip on her knees. "It won't stop." "What won't?" "The voices. They keep saying things. About someone named Chinelo. About a journal." Ifeoma's fingers froze on the book's spine. For a long time she said nothing, and Nkiru wondered if she had ruined her only chance at trust. Then Ifeoma lowered her voice. "My sister was here," she said, "years ago. Before I came, she told me stories about a girl who died, a student. They said it was an accident, but no one believed it. Her name was Chinelo." Nkiru's breath hitched. "What happened?" "They never said, only that it was hushed up. Teachers avoided it. Students learned not to ask. But my sister said Chinelo kept a diary. She wrote about things she'd seen, things the school wanted hidden. The whispers keep mentioning it," Nkiru whispered back. "A journal. In the hall." Ifeoma's dark eyes studied her for a long moment. Then she snapped her book shut. "Don't let them pull you deeper. Secrets here don't like being uncovered." But it was too late. That night the walls seemed to sense her hunger for answers. They hissed louder, threads of words weaving together. Behind the panel, the hall remembers. Find the book, find me. Nkiru pressed her palms hard against her ears. Stop, she whispered into the blanket. Leave me alone. But the voices only softened, becoming coaxing, intimate, like someone leaning close in the dark. Help me, you're the only one listening. Her body trembled with fear, and something else, something like responsibility. If no one else heard, then maybe it was meant for her. Days blurred. Rain came and went, soaking uniforms on the lines, dripping steadily from clogged gutters. The school carried on, indifferent. Assemblies, roll calls, punishments for late chores. Nkiru's mind drifted further from all of it. She searched the corridors with her eyes, noting cracks, panels, places where stone met wood. The main assembly hall drew her gaze most. It stood at the heart of the compound, tall and echoing, with beams that groaned under the weight of years. There, she felt the whispers strongest. Not always audible, but humming under her skin when she stepped inside. One afternoon, she lingered after choir practice, waiting until footsteps faded and the double doors creaked shut. The hall swallowed her in silence. Shafts of light angled through high windows, stirring dust motes that danced like restless spirits. She walked slowly along the wall. Her fingers brushed plaster, rough and uneven. She stopped at a section near the stage where the paint looked different, darker, as though it had been replaced. The hum in her chest deepened. Closer. Her heart thudded. She pressed her palm flat. The wall seemed almost warm beneath her hand. Help me. The sound came so clearly, she stumbled back, breath sharp. The next second, the hall doors banged open. She whirled. Ifeoma stood there, book in hand, brows knit. What are you doing here alone? Nkiru struggled to form words. I thought I heard. Ifeoma strode forward, grabbing her arm. You can't stay here. Don't give them more than they already have. They're telling me where it is. Ifeoma's grip tightened. And if you find it? What then? Do you think secrets die quietly? They'll take something from you in return. Her eyes shone not with anger but with fear. That night, Nkiru dreamed of a girl she had never met. Chinelo. She stood at the foot of the bed, face shadowed, uniform torn at the hem. Her lips moved soundlessly. And yet Nkiru heard the words as though whispered directly into her bones. Find it, or I will never rest. When Nkiru jolted awake, her throat ached with a scream she had not released. The days after the dream were unbearable. Nkiru could no longer pretend the whispers were harmless. They had shape now. A voice, a presence. Sometimes she swore she saw movement in the corners of her vision, a flicker of a girl in a torn hem slipping behind a door, a shadow darting across the dormitory floor. She avoided looking too long at mirrors. She feared what face might look back. One evening, while the dormitory buzzed with chatter, Ifeoma tugged her aside. You look worse, she said bluntly. Tell me what's happening. Nkiru swallowed hard. She came to me. In a dream, she begged me to find it. Ifeoma's eyes darted around to make sure no one was listening. Don't say things like that where others can hear. They'll think you're cursed. Maybe I am, Nkiru whispered. But I can't stop now. Ifeoma's jaw tightened. She hesitated, then slipped something into Nkiru's hand, a small torchlight. If you're determined, then at least don't stumble in the dark. Nkiru looked up, startled. You believe me? I don't know what I believe, Ifeoma muttered. But I know your eyes don't lie, and I know this place. It eats people who don't fight back. That night, Nkiru waited until the dormitory sank into silence. She counted breaths, heartbeats, the rustle of a girl turning in her sleep. When the air grew heavy with slumber, she slid from bed, clutching the torchlight. The compound was different at night. The air felt thicker, the dark heavier. Shadows stretched too long, as though walls bent with them. She padded barefoot across the courtyard, the torchlight unlit in her hand. The hall loomed ahead. its outline stark against a pale sliver of moon. The doors groaned faintly, though no wind stirred. She pushed one open, slipping inside. Silence swallowed her whole. Dust rose where her feet touched the floor. High windows cast faint silver shafts, just enough to outline the long rows of benches and the wide stage. The whispers began almost at once. "You came, you heard me." Her torchlight beam wavered across peeling paint. She approached the far wall, where she had once felt warmth. "Closer, it's here." Her palm pressed flat again. This time the wall pulsed with an almost living hum beneath her skin. She gasped and yanked her hand back. The plaster trembled. For a moment she thought she saw it ripple, as if it were not solid at all, but a thin veil stretched over something desperate to break through. Her chest heaved. "Where? Show me!" she whispered fiercely. The torchlight flickered. Its beam landed on a small wooden panel near the stage base, one she hadn't noticed before. Barely larger than a drawer. Its edges uneven, as though it had been patched carelessly years ago. Nkiru's pulse thundered in her ears. She crouched, prying at the panel. Her nails scraped, splinters biting. The wood groaned, resisting, but then gave way with a sharp crack. Behind it lay a hollow space. Inside, wrapped in brittle cloth, was a small book. Her breath caught. The diary. She reached in, fingers trembling. The cloth disintegrated at her touch, falling like ash. She drew the book out, its leather cover cracked with age, pages yellowed. The whispers surged, jubilant. "Yes. Yes, you found me." Her hands shook as she opened it. Faint ink sprawled across the first page, letters curling elegantly. "Property of Chinelo A. If lost, please return." Nkiru's throat tightened. She turned the page. The entries began simply notes about classes, friends, chores, but soon the tone shifted. Chinelo wrote of teachers behaving strangely. Meetings held at night, whispers of punishments that never appeared in official records. Then came darker lines. "There are things in these walls. I hear them. I think they hear me too. Someone is watching me. I don't know who to trust. If anything happens to me, let this be my witness." Nkiru's chest constricted. Her fingers itched to turn more pages, to uncover what had been hidden. But the whispers thickened, overlapping now, voices crowding around her. "Read it all. Let it out. We waited so long. You cannot keep a secret." The air grew heavy, pressing down. The walls groaned as though the building itself strained closer. Suddenly, the hall doors slammed shut behind her. Nkiru leapt to her feet, diary clutched tight. "Who's there?" No answer, only the voices, rising into a cacophony. "Share it, confess it. Secrets must not stay buried." Her torchlight flickered violently, then died, plunging her into darkness. She gasped, fumbling. The diary felt like it burned in her hands. Alive. In the dark, she saw her dream again. Chinelo standing at the foot of her bed, lips moving, eyes pleading. But this time she heard her clearly. "If you don't speak the truth, the walls will." The air thickened until it felt like water pressing against her skin. The whispers rattled inside her skull, a storm of voices, each more desperate than the last. "Tell it, speak it, truth, truth, truth." Nkiru clutched the diary to her chest, her breaths sharp and ragged. She wanted to run, but the doors were shut tight, swallowed into the dark. Even if she could reach them, she knew somehow the building would not let her leave until it was done. Her knees trembled. She opened the diary again, pages fluttering as though guided by an unseen hand. They stopped near the middle. Her torchlight, though dead, glowed faintly now as if the book itself cast a pale illumination. The words on the page bled into clarity. "I saw them take her. Not for punishment. Not for discipline. They whispered to her, just like they whispered to me. She fought. She screamed. The walls swallowed her sound. When she was gone, there was no trace, only silence. I think I am next." Nkiru's stomach lurched. She whispered aloud without meaning to, her voice cracking in the vast emptiness. Chinelo, they erased you. The whisper searched hundreds of voices wailing, sighing, overlapping in joy and grief. She spoke it, she named it. Truth is loose. The silence is broken. The building trembled. Dust rained from the rafters. The benches groaned and shifted as if dragged by invisible hands. Nkiru stumbled back, arms tied around the diary. Panic clawed her chest. If she let this continue, the hall itself might collapse. "What do you want from me?" she cried. The answer came, one voice rising above the rest of girls, clear and trembling but resolute. Tell them all, or the walls will." Nkiru's mouth went dry. She thought of the dormitory full of sleeping girls, of Ifeoma's steady gaze, of the teachers who walked the corridors pretending not to hear the strange creaks at night. If she carried the secret alone, it would rot her from inside, just as it had Chinelo. She had to speak. Her lips trembled. Slowly, she forced the words into the dark. Chinelo A was silenced here. This school buried her truth, but I will not. The whispers shuddered, then quieted, as though listening. She clutched the diary and raised her voice, steady despite the tears streaking her face. This place feeds on silence. But I will not be silent. I will tell them. I will tell everyone. The air shifted. For the first time, the weight lifted from her chest. The darkness thinned. The doors creaked open with a long, shuddering sigh. Nkiru's knees nearly buckled with relief. She stumbled out, the diary clutched like a lifeline. The night air was sharp and cool against her damp skin. Behind her, the hall settled into silence, as if exhausted. The next morning, she stood at assembly, the diary heavy in her school bag. Her heart hammered, but Ifeoma's hand brushed against hers in a silent promise. "You're not alone." When the principal called for announcements, Nkiru stepped forward. Her voice shook at first, but grew stronger with each word. She told them about the diary, about the whispers, about Chinelo who had vanished. Gasps rippled through the courtyard. Teachers exchanged frantic glances. Some tried to hush her. Others barked warnings. But Nkiru didn't stop. The truth poured out of her. Unstoppable. Unstoppable. By the time she finished, the compound was silent not with disbelief, but with the heavy weight of recognition. Every student there had heard something in the walls at one time or another. Every teacher had ignored a sound that had no explanation. Now, it could not be denied. That night, Nkiru slept without whispers. But as dawn light filtered into the dormitory, she dreamed once more. Chinelo stood at the edge of her bed, no longer ragged, her expression calm. She did not speak. She only inclined her head, as though in gratitude, before fading into sunlight. Nkiru woke with tears on her cheeks and the faintest sense that the school itself was breathing easier. But deep within the oldest walls, beneath layers of plaster and paint, other secrets still stirred, waiting for someone brave enough, or foolish enough, to listen.